Oh, great. We are live. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning / this afternoon. We wanted to set up this call primarily to follow up on the email that Roy shared last week. We're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of talking through the different points in the email that he shared. And then really the majority of the time is to open up to the group. If you have any questions, anything that's not clear that you want to discuss further, our aim for this call is really to get everyone on the same page so that we can, start to coordinate more closely moving forward as the Impacathons get underway. And, they've already started in some countries. No, Roy, Marianne isn't able to join. She's, I think, in Tunis, but Dunya is here instead.
So yes, I'm going to
yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and then take us through the presentation. I won't be able to see the comments while I'm doing that. So if there is, a question or something pops up, if somebody could flag that for me, that would be great. Thank you. All right. Okay, so today we'll talk through some of the key milestones that are coming up, then spend a little bit of time talking about the Unconference theme and reviewing, the participation by country. And then we can also delve a little bit into the Impacathon curriculum and its alignment to the SIP. And then, as I mentioned, the majority of our time here today will be devoted to Q&A from everyone on the call. So I'll go through it, but Roy, Christine, or others, if there's additional information that you want to share, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, happy to do so, Natasha. I'm sure Christine and I can support on some of the slides.
Great, thank you. So in terms of milestones, there are some key milestones that we're working towards together through the Impacathon. So the Impacathons themselves were aiming to take place from April through to July. So we've already started in some countries, and I know another batch of countries will be starting in May. And then the second key milestone to keep in mind is the baseline survey. So we are working on a survey for young leaders as a baseline as part of DL, but that can also be used for the Impacathon. So for those countries who've already started, I know we're already in communication with you about how to manage that process. But for others who haven't started yet, just to highlight that before you start your actual content of the Impacathon, we'll need to do this baseline. And more details will be shared around that with you and the tools itself, but just to flag that now so that you can factor that into your planning. Then there are some timelines and milestones around the SIP rollout. So the first phase of the SIP rollout will be done on May 28th. And the second phase will be released around July 2nd. And Roy, would you be able to remind me, phase 1, that's allowing youth to set up their profiles and connect with each other. And then was there other things incorporated in phase 1? And then what would youth be able to do in phase 2?
Well, I'll ask Tony to jump in if he can, because he can probably provide the most detail.
Sure, yeah. Sorry I was late joining. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, there was a different Google Hangout link in the calendar invite that I was looking at, so sorry about that. The goal of phase 1 is to support users to create their profile as a social innovator, to join the community and match and connect with others. And our goal is that they will leverage some work that they do on the front end of the Impacathon learning flow in support of that. Their compelling vision for change will be content that will be leveraged to populate their profile, and also support how they go about matching with others and connecting with others. Phase 2 will bring in more advanced supports to the digital sharing of learning artifacts associated with their HCD process that they are going through as an Impacathon participant. The user experience is not dependent upon them following the YLP Impacathon flow. It is relying on that they have gone through or are going through some form of support of the HCD creation process. And it's at the level of being familiar to users in terms of basic tools that are common to that process, whether it be guided by the YLP or other similar learning programs.
Thanks, Tony. So then our next key milestone is around kind of wrapping up the Impacathon with the prototype fair and pitching competition. And we've set the timeline for that as July 27th. And that's in order to allow the Unconference participant selection to be finalized by August 1st. So as you know, the conference itself is the week of October 15th, and we found last year that to adequately prepare both logistically and support youth to prepare their presentations, we do need about 2 to 2.5 months. So we're looking to have all participants selected by the August 1st, and that allows us enough time to get their visas, to arrange flights that aren't last minute at higher cost, and really allow us to prepare both for their logistics, but then also to give the youth themselves and our team time to support and prepare for any sessions that they might deliver during the Unconference. So youth who are interested in delivering sessions will, submit their applications by September 1st. Then they'll be reviewed, and the youth will find out, who's selected by October 1st. So that gives them also 2 weeks to then further prepare their content for their session.
If I could just add, Natasha, in the phase 2 rollout of the SIP, one of the features that will be in play will be supporting users in their pitch capture and sharing with others. And so they'll have the July timeframe to interact with others within that community on their pitches if that's something that they will choose to engage with as a form of support.
Oh, that's great.
Just to clarify, Tony, that'll be available starting July 2nd, but they can make use of it up until October 15th.
Correct, and beyond.
Yeah.
Hi, Natasha. It's Heather over here.
Hi, Heather.
Hi. I just wanted to mention one thing to the few people who are on the call from the country teams, and that's just a small logistic detail is for people who are wanting to go to the Unconference. So for youth, some countries will need visas and some countries will not. But the one piece that everyone who needs visas will need all the passports and papers in order to apply for the visa. So I know that was an issue in some countries. At the last minute, people didn't even have passports by the time they were selected, and it just caused a lot of delay and question as whether they could attend or not. So we are able to support people in purchasing visas, but not passports. So if they have to get passports, or if they if they're thinking about being able to come, they should be doing that kind of thing, that paperwork and applications for passports as soon as they think they can. If there's any issues with this, let me know, and we can talk about it. But I think it's a good thing to tell the youth. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Heather, I wonder if it might be a good idea to include that as the selection criteria, so that when we share with them, here's what you need to have in place by August, by the pitching competition stage, in order to be selected, you must have a passport as part of that, or if you want to be able to go.
Identification papers, yeah. Okay, we can do that. Thanks, Tony.
All right, thank you, Heather. So before we move on, I'll just open it up. Are there any other questions or comments around milestones from anyone? If not, then we can shift towards the Unconference theme. So as you know, we are looking at a gender focus to the Unconference this year to align both with the new proposal that we've submitted to GAC and which also has explored the emphasis of GAC's new FIAP on women, and we really do want to demonstrate what DOT is doing in this regard. So our theme of the Unconference is social innovation that works for women. Now, that doesn't require that innovations be focused on women as the primary beneficiary, and nor does it restrict the Impacathons to be gender focused. But really what we're looking for here is that all youth who go to the Unconference will be required to perform a gender analysis of their innovation and solution. And the program development team is working on a course that will be released at the end of April that will support young leaders to be able to do this analysis. So they'll receive the tools and the guidance to do this. And this gender analysis, looks both at how their innovation impacts women, but also, how it impacts gender relations in their community. And it's quite an in-depth process that really gives youth the tools and the information to then decide how they might want to address some of those gender considerations that arise through that work. So the second requirement is that participants going to the Unconference will also be required to describe how women are involved in the solution and how it improves gender equality in their community. And this will be part of their pitch to go to the Unconference. And also on our side, it'll be part of the selection criteria to identify those youth who will go. So again, it's not about making the innovation solely focused on women or on quote women's issues, but really about making sure that all Unconference participants have really considered the gender considerations of their innovation.
Natasha, I guess a question for Roy. What's the plan for releasing this course? I'm thinking of scenarios where cohorts of young people are not going through the YLP. But are still being groomed as candidates.
I'm going to invite Christine to jump in.
Sure. I think, we'll release the course and make it available to anyone regardless of the curriculum that they've decided to use. But whether or not they go through our course to support them to apply this gender analysis lens, the important thing that we'll be looking for is that they've done this gender analysis. So perhaps there's a curriculum that you feel works better in your context, but that takes them to the point of being able to do this gender analysis, then that works well. It's just in terms of requirements for attendance for the Unconference and for their pitch, we'll need to see the results of that analysis. So similar to how we're approaching the other parts of the curriculum, we're really looking for the outcomes of the curriculum and the objectives, the learning objectives that we've set out to be met, and whether they're met through our curriculum or someone else's curriculum, that's less important than what happens at the end and what the results are of that learning.
Maybe just describe to Tony a little bit about our typical course release in terms of the orientation and then office hours, just in case there are audiences that want to take advantage of that, even if they're not using the full impact curriculum.
Yeah, and maybe if you could touch on, will interested parties only be able to access that learning content by registering through Moodle, or will there be a standalone instance of that available for distribution?
Well, I would recommend that for facilitators, that we give them accounts in Moodle, and they can get all of their material as facilitators from any of the courses. It would probably be useful for them to get that.
And I wouldn't have any concerns with that. I'm thinking of like our labs, and we could give staff access to that, and then they could make choices from there. But
yeah, exactly. So we'll give them facilitator accounts, but the participants don't need to be registered.
Yeah, and that's the same for, as Roy said, for all of the curriculum, that Moodle really acts as our content management system in the moment. So if there's any curriculum that you're looking for, facilitators can log into Moodle and have access to it and then pull it down and use it as they would like to. In terms of release, we always do release at the end of the sprint, where we do an orientation session with facilitators and staff to let them know what the course contains. And we also do an office hours sessions with the developer. So we have been releasing videos that give sort of an orientation to the course, and then opening it up for an hour or two with the developer if there are any specific questions from those who'll be facilitating or running the program. And we record them, but we can also open them up to a broader participation if there are more people who are interested in this course specifically, or any of the courses from the Impact curriculum. We can always open it up and do some Q&A sessions with specific developers as needed.
Great. If as that rolls out, if there could be broad circulation of the timing of those meetings, it would be great to have the opportunity to invite partner staff to join.
Sure, of course.
Given that there are a lot of partners, or certainly more than have ever participated in past releases of the courses, we likely will want to be more flexible in how we engage with partners. I know Julia will have a partner. There'll potentially be a partner here in Canada. Tony, you've got a partner, and there'll be the new partners in Malawi, Zambia, Ghana. So we'll stay flexible around that.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Are there any other questions or comments around the theme? So then moving on to the participation by country. So as you will have seen, we're looking at a range of Unconference participants from 4 to 10, depending on the country. So the majority of countries, those in digital livelihoods and also EBG, will be there will be 6 spots reserved for them at the Unconference. Kenya gets a few more because they are hosting, and then obviously the costs of their youth participating are less. And then for those countries that are being funded through CORE, we've discussed with Janet, and we've agreed that we can reserve 4 spots for your youth. So again, these numbers were reached at by considering kind of the overall number of youth that we want to have at the Unconference. We want to keep it somewhat similar to last year, so in the 70 to 80 range. That just makes it more manageable, and if we go larger than that, it kind of requires different venues and obviously has budget implications. So given that there are a few more countries joining this year, we've adjusted the numbers accordingly. Any questions or comments related to that? All right, well then we'll continue.
Sorry, Tony. I think that maybe we just ran out of room on the slide. It wasn't intentional to make you disappear. South Africa's not on the list.
Oh, I'm sorry. I copied this from the email. I'll add that in. My apologies, Tony.
Okay, no problem. I was just checking.
Surprise, you're not invited anymore. No. All right. So then shifting towards the Impacathon curriculum and the alignment with the SIP. Roy and Christine, did you want to talk through these slides?
I can. I was just talking with Roy earlier that I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on the curriculum because I've gone through it with everybody on the call in the past. So happy to answer any questions you might have about the content and getting access to it or any of what's inside there. There were just two things that I wanted to mention. That, of course, the course we were just talking about, the Social Innovation Advancing Women course, is in development right now, and as Natasha mentioned, will be released at the end of the month. And we're also working on some support tools for the MVP prototype fair or the pitch competition, which is this event that happens at the end of the Impacathon, and that is where youth are, pitching their idea and their innovation and what they've done so far, and talking about the way that they've integrated the gender analysis into their work. I've sent out some of those feedback tools for comment from your teams. I did that yesterday, so looking for some input to make sure that what we're creating works for you. So those are the two that we're working on this month that we'll be rolling out, and everything else is ready and up in Moodle. So if you want to take a look at it, you can always get you set up in Moodle if you're not already there, and you can take a look at the curriculum as it rolls out.
So, Christine.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Butwan. Yeah.
Yeah, so for Christine, and so when we talk about these contents, the curriculum, who are we targeting precisely? Because we've been talking with my team, and I would like to hear what Jordan and Lebanon and the others are doing. Like, who is the right fit? Initially, for the past Unconference, we had youth who were far gone in their initiative, plus others who were just started. So we were talking about, as for us, we are going to start.
Well,
so in terms of who comes, are we targeting the very green, or the ones who we're training on how to come up with an idea? Are we targeting the ones who have had the idea for 1 year but haven't implemented? So I just wanted to hear from the rest of the group, because last Impacathon we found that there was a bit of difference in terms of the youth who had been invited, but for us to make for the content to make sense for the young people, who should we be targeting?
Well, I'm going to jump in, Violette, and I will allow everyone to respond. But I'd like to take us back. I'd like everyone to close their eyes and return to the boardroom at KPMG when we talked about the goals and focus for the program. And we agreed that we were going to be moving youth from zero state. And thank you for pulling the slide up, from zero state through inspiration to implementation. That was sort of what we came to a collective agreement around. Happy to hear from everyone else.
Thanks, Roy. And I think it's very important then that we put it as one of the criteria for the youth who are entering the Impacathon across the network.
Any other questions or comments related to this? So Christine and Roy have kind of taken us through these slides, and I'm sure they're not new for most on the call. And then I guess just also to sort of summarize that, there is a link between this content and the SIP, as Tony highlighted earlier. So there's different submissions that participants going to the Unconference will be expected to have completed. And there's opportunities for them to, be sharing this on the SIP and be gathering feedback from their colleagues. And they're organized sort of by those different phases: the inspiration, ideation, and implementation. Oh, I apologize. There's a typo.
If I could just add something quickly to that, Natasha, and that is that the user experience on the SIP has been designed such that it is not dependent upon whether the young person is going through the YLP learning experience or not. If they are engaged in any other analogous activities that follow the basics of the human-centered design process, that how these opportunities to digitize and share these artifacts are presented to them will is being done in a way such that it's an obvious and natural part of a milestone in their journey. And if they're in the YLP, then it'll be a no-brainer for them to work with the system tools to capture what they've done. And if they've done it through some other forms of support, it'll be recognizable for them as well. A business model canvas, they're working on their pitch, these sorts of things, right? So I just wanted to emphasize that if a given country operation is following another process for grooming young people to be selection ready, the only requirement is that they're going through, they've gone through some human-centered design training of some form or another to get them to that point. And regarding the onboarding experience to the SIP, I wanted to let everyone know that we'll be doing individual engagements with each of the countries to talk through how we'll collaborate in onboarding youth for each of the countries onto the SIP, customized to your schedule and your engagement plans with young people, and how you are going about supporting them to be selection ready in August. So I just wanted to let you know that there's more that will be reaching out to you, and there'll be more information coming along those lines.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone regarding the curriculum piece, or what youth are going to be required to have completed in order to go to the Unconference, or the link between the Impacathon and the SIP?
I just have one quick question, Natasha, if you could go back to the previous slide. I'm not clear that having all of these completed will be a part of the requirements list for selection. Can someone clarify that? I'm imagining that some of this may be optional for youth that are not following the YLP process.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, Tony. The intention of the sequencing of these artifacts is that they guide youth through a process and they build on one another. In the end, the Impact Business Canvas and your pitch are likely the bulk of what will be required, because in many respects, your compelling vision for change, your social impact idea, your brand map, all of the information and thinking that goes into those manifests itself in the canvas.
Can I ask something here? It's Dunya. Marianne already talked with Roy maybe about all that. Just for me to understand, also same question as Tony, because it's going to be our partners working on the content of a program, not the YLP. So we won't have participants following the YLP. So do they have to submit also, same question, the same products on the SIP or not? It's only the final product.
Roy, if I could just respond from design intent for the SIP perspective, and then maybe you can talk about it programmatically.
Yeah.
Sure. So as I was mentioning before, the user experience of the SIP has been designed such that these are optional. Tools to engage with in support of their journey. They don't have to do those to be active on the platform, to match with other people and engage and collaborate. But if they have put energy into these, they are leveraged by the platform as a communication tool. If a young person is in a particular stage of their HCD journey, then being able to share their social impact idea in a succinct way helps them match and engage with others. So a simple tool will be accessible to them to gather that same content with a lightweight process, not to the same depth as the YLP learning experience would guide them to do, but the artifact, the output will be the same. And so from a SIP perspective, that's all optional, and those tools are there to support efficient exchanges with others, congruent with their journey. Programmatically, I'll leave it to Roy to respond.
Christine, feel free to jump in if I run off course. Natasha, could you return to the slide that shows the phases? Yeah. So the objective, the outcomes that we sought to support through the curriculum that's been created is to support an individual to move through the first 3 phases that you see here. To move a young person from early inspiration around a challenge in their community that they might be inspired to help solve, through the ideation process to building a prototype and testing it in their community. So the curriculum is designed to support a young person to move through those stages, and the artifacts support that learning. So the compelling vision for change is about them kind of formulating their ideas around their inspiration, and then their social impact idea solidifies their ideation, and then finally their canvas, and as well the prototype test that they build takes them through that last phase. To Tony's point, it's not necessary that they create those artifacts, but that they go through the process. So if your partner has content that will guide youth, or the youth that you're working with have been through this process, they should have no problems being able to pitch their idea and show and demonstrate their idea in a way that will support their selection. Christine, maybe I'll stop there and just ask you to talk a little bit about the selection criteria and the tools that Ellen's building, because that will likely be important for the teams that are not following the Impact Learning Plan.
Sure. So the selection criteria tools that we're working on there's 2 of them. One is sort of a quick feedback tool that looks at some of the main areas that we focus on during the curriculum and what that we're looking for in an innovation. So things like gender, as we've talked about, but also the process, the HCD process, how they've incorporated their feedback that they've heard from people in their community, how well their problem is articulated and the rationale for why this is something that they'd like to take on. So pulling from that compelling vision for change. And then also innovation and sort of the way that they're applying new thinking to their idea. So the tools are meant to look for all these key elements that we're building in throughout the process, and that DOT feels is important in social innovation and social enterprise. So one of them is a feedback tool that can be used by those who are looking at the pitches and watching them in real time to give both to sort of give us some input on what they thought of the ideas, but also to give the youth some input on their pitch. And the second is a more in-depth rubric that will be used by the facilitators, our staff, and then also peer learners who attended the pitch that give a little bit more meat to the feedback that they would receive that we know is going to be really important for young people as they move forward with their ideas, and then also to help us select through the criteria. And we're really hoping that there's the ability to record these pitches and share them with the youth, and have them share them with us as well, whether that happens on SIP or on Moodle or somewhere else, so that they're able to take a look at what their pitch was like, to see it in real time, which we know is really powerful, and also to give us some really great insight into what type of ideas are coming in and helping us to select those innovations that come to the Unconference.
Christine and Roy, I just wanted to add or re-emphasize that the goal of the SIP is not to play any learning management system or learning content role in all of this. The assumption is that one way or another, young people will have or are engaged with some form of programmatic support, whether it be the YLP or something equivalent. And that's the intention of the SIP, is just to be a companion technology to those experiences, to aid peer-to-peer connection and sharing and collaboration. So I just want to make sure that people understand that that this SUP will not be a substitute to any of those kinds of learning experiences. It's a companion to.
Thank you, everyone. Any other questions on that? If not, we can open it up, more broadly. We have 15 minutes remaining, so this is really an opportunity for people on the call. If you have any other questions or comments that have come up, we have time to talk them through.
Tony, I'm going to ask, you had popped me a note. Were we able to answer some of the questions you had asked me earlier today? Were we able to answer, pardon me?
Yeah, as I outlined in my email, was just trying to zero in on when working with our labs, how can I refine our communication with them to be very explicit and succinct around, acknowledging they have their own learning program similar to Lebanon's situation. And how do we communicate to those that are orchestrating those learning experiences? If you want young people going through those learning experiences to be considered candidates for this opportunity, here's the opportunity, here are the criteria, and here are the tools that we'll make available to assist with meeting that criteria that you can optionally engage with, including things like what Christine was mentioning, rubrics around supporting people to review and refine pitches and that sort of thing. So finding a way of packaging that up and working with those involved in that to sanity check, yep, this is good to go is basically what I was looking for. And I think we've got all of the information pieces there. I'll just want to circle back with you and run it by you before sending it along.
Yeah, that's great. And whoever comes in first could be you or, the Canada team or Julia's team will likely learn from that and improve as we go along in terms of supporting these partners. So bear with us as we do that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to take a first crack at that because I think I'm, out of all of those in that situation, I'm probably most at the ready to get that across to our labs. So I'll be putting energy into that this week and circulating that for review and comment.
Sounds good. Thanks. Glennis, were you going to ask a question or was Boris really wanting to ask a question?
You can hear that. I did want to ask a question, and I apologize because I know we touched on it earlier, but as you can hear, he's being a whiny baby this morning, and I was trying to deal with him. So I know, so the theme is about social innovation that works for women, and it doesn't have to be specific to women as the end target, but can someone talk a little bit more or maybe reiterate, sorry, this might have been covered earlier, but sort of what the selection criteria looks like for that then and how we envision this being framed around gender?
I'm going to defer to others.
We're still in the process of developing the course, and we talked a little bit about the course taking a gender analysis lens, Glennis. So it's going to be guiding youth around some of those key questions, like how are women involved in the design? What does this do for gender equality in your community? In terms of the supply chain, how is this, integrating some thoughts on gender? So we're going to be focusing on those key areas in the course and in the analysis that we're looking for. And then looking for evidence of application of that analysis in their pitch and in their idea. So have they fully considered some of these issues we've been raising in the way that they've designed their innovation so that they're taking into account an innovation that works for both women and men at the same time. So we'll have a little bit more specifics once we have some of those tools in terms of language of what that looks like at different levels. But overall, it's broadly looking that they've applied a gender analysis to their innovation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? If not, then I think we can wrap up. Just a reminder before we do, as we've talked about during the call, there are a lot of pieces that require sort of coordination and connection, and we on our end are trying to align our plans to what's happening in the countries. So because of that, it is, very important and helpful for us to be kept up to date on what countries' plans are. So just a reminder that, if your plans do change or you need to adjust them, please keep us updated and let us know so that we can also, factor that into our own planning as we move forward, and we can all arrive at that August 1st start date with our young people selected and ready to prepare for the Unconference. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time. As I mentioned, we're recording this, so we'll be sharing the link around later. And if you have any questions that come up as you further reflect, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can.
Natasha, thanks so much for leading.
Thanks,
and
Natasha.
everyone else for your
Thanks,
input.
Natasha.
Thanks, Natasha, for organizing this, and thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Boris.
Bye.
Ciao.